final, finished 5th before obviously being sacked. But he's done pretty well wherever he's been, Unai, apart from maybe PSG where he didn't do well, but a lot of managers fail there. So yeah, he has to see how he does in this season. But I think he could be a top 4 manager. No reason why not. I think the way he plays football is brilliant. I really like the system. I think it's doing good stuff for us, but we'll have to wait and see. Let's delve a bit deeper then into why we think what is happening. What happened on Sunday is maybe not as surprising as some people say, albeit what's up with the this guy again. What's it called? Let's see, delve a bit deeper, because there is a bit of a pattern which we have seen on, we have gone into a bit on the channel, but I think this probably exemplifies the problem with what's happening at the moment. It's something we have to address. I'm not saying it's unaddressable. It probably is, but let's bring this up. Nathan Clark, by the way, brilliant content creator. Taxis Guy, Extra Inch. Go follow him. But he's brought up, which is something that we've been mentioning on the channel, about a bit of a drop-off in moments in games, which we've seen at, the Leicester game. We had a bit of a drop-off about the hour mark, which is when they scored. Brentford game, United game. And here it is exemplified in data. So PPDA is basically pressing intensities, how many passes you allow per defensive action. So how many passes you allow the opposition to have before you engage them in a tackle or an interception or something like that. And as you know, Tottenham are the best in the league. We've got the lower, so the lower the number, the better your pressing is, because you're allowing less passes from the opposition per your defensive action. So Tottenham have the lowest in the league. We're the best pressing team in the league. We allow the lowest passes per defensive action, and we can see here during game states, as you see this is Brentford first half. Very low pass per defensive action, actually 5. I think our average over the season is about 8.2, and that's obviously really low for a I think the average, I don't know what the average is, but that's pretty low. 8.2 is the best in the league. I think the next best is Liverpool. So as you can see here, average 5.9 in the first half, 10.8 in the second half. So big drop off in our big drop off in our pressing in the second half. You can see in the time round about 46 to 60, that mark, there is a drop off. And that's something we've noticed on the channel. And you can see here there is a drop-off when it comes around the 60-minute mark. We do drop off. There does seem to be a second win, but again, later in the game, there's a drop-off. And if you remember in the Brentford game, obviously, first half, on top of them, unbelievable pressing. We created so many chances first half. Then second half, Brentford did get back in the game a bit. And they did... put a bit of pressure on you. Remember, Sade had that header, which was saved by Vicario. They had a couple of not that they created loads of chances, but definitely was a bit of a drop off, and that's because of maybe the intensity. We were struggling to keep up for 90 minutes. You can see here, Brentford, they upped their intensity, had a 3.8 PPDA, which is really low, and maybe we struggled to deal with that. Man United, you can see again, first half really high PPDA. Against Man United, we were here in the blue, but again 46 60th, a big drop off before getting a bit of a second wind. And then maybe late in the game, 10 men 3-0 up, we kind of just saw the game out and didn't bother about United having the ball. But you can see here yet again a drop off in the PPDA around the 46 60th minute. Just seemed to be just after half time, to be honest. So not there does seem to be a problem with our drop in intensity at the end, at the beginning of second halves, around the 60-minute mark. And again, if you remember in that United game, it was around that time Casemiro had a chance. They're having a few corners. That was even then with 10 men. Not to say again that they create loads of chances, but definitely a drop off from Tottenham in their intensity. Looking at the Brighton game, you can see here again. Overall, there was a drop off in the second half, but a drop there was maybe because we played in midweek in Europe, but big drop off in intensity just before half time. Look, started the game so strongly. Obviously, got 2 goals. We got the second goal. As it was, the pressing was dropping off a bit anyway, but we're dropping off. It looks, as you can see here, Brighton's intensity was actually more than ours in this game, which is starting to associate. But as you can see at the beginning of the game, which is when we were on top and doing really well. We were really intense, getting chances. We got 2 goals, then a major drop off. And as you can see, this was the level in the first half 8.4, 7.3 around there. And then second half 15, a big drop off in intensity again around that time. I mean, it does say here there was a big drop off just before half time as well, which I guess makes sense because you remember, Matoma created that chance for Welbeck and they had a few openings. They had a header. I think Welbeck had a header as well in the box. So they had a few sighters. Not like clear-cut chances, a few sighters, but you can see maybe they were growing in the game. And as you can see, the pressing was still dropping off massively in that 46th to 60th minute. And that's, again, more evidence. And that's when they blitzed us. It did improve a tiny bit, but never really got back to the level it was in the first half, that pressing intensity. So there is clearly a problem here. There is clearly a problem here about the intensity of our pressing dropping off. And is it a case of we're just too intense? Is Ange, what does Ange ask him to do, too much to sustain over 90 minutes? Is there a way we can kind of adjust our pressing system to make it more sustainable? I remember maybe, I don't know if I have the numbers, but under Poch, we kind of fairly in his early reign, we had similar problems where the pressing would we wouldn't be able to keep it up for 90 minutes and we would puff out. But I think he did just a few things and we got fitter. And when we were at our peak, we were relentless. But at the moment, they're definitely, as much as we're doing really well in first halves, we're dominating. And even moments in second halves, especially after the 60th minute, we seem to have a second win. But there is a problem here. There is a problem here. We can see here, as Nathan has exemplified, you can see from momentum. This is the Brentford game. Again, around the hour mark, there's a drop off in intensity, and you can see momentum swings in the opposition favour. Again, around the hour mark, momentum swings, and around here, the hour mark, and the momentum switches in the opposition favour again around that time. Brighton, it happened earlier. Maybe it's because of the midweek game, it happened a bit earlier, but you can see here, Brighton, it did happen earlier. So this is something we do have to look at. Ange does have to sort out, and it's all good and well saying it's the players' fault and all that kind of stuff, and going hard on the players. And maybe it is, and maybe on Sunday it was the players, but I think Ange also has to look at himself and also has to look at the tactics we're deploying. And I'm not saying there's something wrong with what he's deploying. I'm just saying how we play causes problems, and it's on him to kind of find solutions to those problems. And how we do that is a difficult question. Do we have to go through periods where we sit off the pressing, go into a bit of a mid-block, stand off them a bit, and kind of readjust and then go again? I feel like when we had Poch, we kind of did that sometimes. We kind of developed into it. But I guess when you're a team like Postecoglou, when you're having a lot of the possession, and you're the one making the opposition run, those should be the periods where maybe you're making them run a bit and conserving a bit of energy. But as well, when we're on the ball, we're also very intense. We don't really slowly build up. We like to be quite direct. We like to get the ball back and play quickly. We like the keeper. I think we're the lowest team in the league for goal kicks. We don't take our time from goal kicks. Vicario wants the ball and play as soon as possible. We are very intense on and off the ball. And maybe if I don't even think, when people talk about sustainability of the tactics, I think when it comes to being open, all this kind of stuff, high line, I don't think that's what's unsustainable. But maybe being this intense for 90 minutes is proving to be too difficult, or maybe we need to make more changes. That is the problems we're seeing here at the moment. And I think it's good to see what we're seeing on the pitch backed up by data, because it's clear for everyone. I think John McKenzie did a nice thread on the game on his review. You have to follow him; he's from the Athletic as well. Go follow his account. I haven't followed him apparently, but go follow him, Tifo and the Athletic. He does a thread every Monday about things he noticed in the Premier League. So I thought it would be a good thing to go through it. So he's talking about under Postecoglou, Spurs have the most intense teams without the ball. There you go. So 7.5 actually. And look, actually Arsenal was second. So they're also very intense, clearly, in their pressing. Maybe in the last couple of games against Leicester and Southampton, they've upped their pressing a bit. And he says is basically, yeah, we know, I'll explain that to you, what PPDA is. He said what was quite interesting is so to do this, Spurs need to be super aggressive in their pressing. When the opposition is building up with the ball, they like to jump man to man, put them under pressure, and try to force turnover. So this is the setup. You see in the Brighton game, 2 centre backs. Tottenham got 2 forwards pressing man to man. You got 4 onto the 4. They got 2 midfielders and the 2 fullbacks. Tottenham going man to man and pressing really aggressively. You can see here, they go man to man, try and force those turnovers, and that's why we've been so successful gaining from turnovers in this game. And as he said, it created the first goal. But what he said is usually under this, when your teams are going man to man, you'd want maybe your forward players to drop in to create numerical advantages. So that they're able to play out the press, and that means when you've got players dropping deeper, you've got more options. So when we go man to man, there's more players to play around, and it'll be harder unless we commit defenders back forward to the press. It'll be harder for us to kind of win the ball back because they're going to have more players to play around. But what they did is they did the opposite. Hertha actually, instead of forcing bringing forwards back, he actually forced forwards even further forward and actually got forwards up against our 4 defenders, which was Matoma on the left, Minter on the right, Rutter and Welbeck in the forward positions. So what this meant was, as he says, it created space between the defensive line and the pressing, as you can see here, because they were pushing back, meant that we couldn't commit other players forward to the press, and it created a big gap between our midfield and the defensive line, which meant we were really open. Probably meant losing control of that midfield. This meant that Brighton did get through the press. They had space, and they had space to attack. So when Brighton were able to, with some good players they got, when they were able to get through this line, this pressing structure in the second half, which is just right at the beginning. So this is a lead up to the first goal. They were obviously sometimes teams are able to get through, and when they were able to get through, they had these oceans of space, which meant Minter and Matoma had loads of space to run into, and Rutter as well. And secondly, meant Brighton could pressure the back line to cause them problems in these moments when they broke the press. So, which is why maybe we saw the back line under a lot of pressure in that second half, and which is why maybe we're seeing more mistakes. So it's easy to point out mistakes, and there were, but was it because they were being put under too much pressure? Because they were 4 against 4, constantly 1-on-1 against their markers, constantly 1-on-1 against attackers, which means if you're put in that position a lot, the players like Brian, like Mitoma, very good at dribbling, like Rutter, in good and small spaces, like Minter, who's so relentless in his ability to take you on. Maybe that's a reason they were making these mistakes. At times in the first half, Spurs were a little more reticent to press up, only committing 5 players to the press unit and using the back 4 and Benskool to keep the Brighton forwards covered. This actually made it easier for Brighton to build through the first phase because they were pretty easily able to create a free man in Kadioglu. This sort of sequence led to the best chance in the first half. As the game wore on, Brighton started to provoke this tension more and more by pushing Kadioglu up the field to try and generate this 2v1 situations, as you can see, which they were getting a bit of joy right at the end of I felt in the first half, with Kadioglu and Matoma able to create some chances here. As you see, the 2-on-1, because Johnson got pulled on to this player, Eagle. To fix this, Spurs started going much more man-to-man across the field, pushing Doggy up to the opposite fullback to help Johnson, which means Doggy had the fullback here, which means we had 4 again at the back, and Johnson pushed up to Kadioglu. As an aside, this is also a little bit the case because Solanke was tasked with pressing Van der Ven and Verbruggen. Not Van, I think he means Van der Gen, who didn't even play, so I'm guessing he means Dunk, which gives Johnson a little more to cover and help cover. What changed was Johnson would now stay deeper and cover the fullback. But doing this effectively means Spurs were 4 versus 4 along their back line because of Brighton's aggressive front 4 positioning, which meant that if Brighton did break the press, and they did because of what happened, the drop-off in our pressing, they were very nicely situated to cause problems for the Spurs back line. Here's the first goal where the ball is played to the fullback around the press, and now it's the case of finding the ball. So as you can see here, they were able to find the press, and because they got through and they got 4 and 4 at the back, all of a sudden they're able to get overloads, and obviously here's Matoma able to get in behind, and that was causing us problems. And then it's 2v2 at the back line, no overloads. And again, for the second goal, Matoma can drag his fullback narrow, opening up space for Estepinian. As you see, Matoma starts wide, he goes forward, dragging Porro, and then Estepinian gets inside, and then Matoma can pick up the one that led to the second goal where Rutter obviously beat Van der Ven. And once again, Brighton have a series of one-on-one situations which happened. So Estepinian then has the ball. He played to Matoma, who quickly got it off to Rutter, who obviously got his goal. Which end up with, there you go, Matoma, who are very good in one-on-one situations. Matoma, Rutter, proved that yesterday, very good in one-on-one situations. And obviously, there you go, they got the second goal. So Brighton's aggressive positioning with their front four was the key to the comeback against Spurs. It created space that their build-up and our build-up unit could exploit, and it forced Spurs into a series of one-on-one battles along the back line. So I think there's a couple of things there as to why we struggled badly in that second half. The combination of a bit of fatigue meant to a drop-off in pressing. That drop-off in pressing meant that Brighton beat the pressing, and as soon as they beat the pressing, which they did more in the second half because of a bit of fatigue, it meant they were constantly in one-on-one situations, and because they got such great one-on-one attackers, it caused us all sorts of problems in that second half. And that was what led us to losing the game from a winning position, when obviously we gained that advantage because we were fresh in that first half, because our pressing structure is actually really effective, and we actually get chances from it, and Brighton paid the price for that in the opening exchanges. And then these things all came against us. But key factor is definitely Ange has to look at this and analyze the situation, and realize that it wasn't just a case of the Spurs players sacking off potentially, as much as maybe there was a case of a bit of complacency because of the lead, but the fatigue has been a bit of an issue for a few games. So that is something he needs to look at. And the way we still tried to press and then left our back four completely exposed to overloads because of how Brighton have really good one-on-one players and they're very comfortable in those situations. And because our drop-off in pressing led to them beating the press, and that led to them having attackers in really dangerous situations, that's something we need to analyze. And I don't think Ange just saying it's because the players didn't do the fundamentals, all that kind of stuff is helpful. I think Ange needs to take responsibility for some of these key factors. And as much as maybe in the moment, it's easier to blame the players because maybe it looks like they're not running, it looks like all these different things. There are issues here Ange needs to watch out for. And not saying they can't be rectified, not saying that that the way we play, it's all we have to throw it all out and start again. Not at all, because there's a lot of benefits to how we play. But these are the drawbacks that we're seeing in the last few games, and especially this second half on Sunday. And that is something that Ange needs to be mindful of. Big up to everyone in the chat. Wolf Mallow says, Is it a system that is so physically challenging to stay in? Mental lapses stemming from fatigue is from the fatigue is thing. Yeah, I think there's a case for that. There's a case for um, that being um, a problem, and that's what led to what happened in that second half. Top analysis, Sim, generally insightful. Thank you, but big credit to Nathan Clark and John McKenzie as well. Brilliant, brilliant analyzers of the game, and you can learn a lot from them. But it's really good that, and I'm really not happy, but it's interesting that some of the analysis that we've made on the channel is backed up there on the data. But obviously, they bring a lot more to the table, drilling deeper as to the tactical elements of it. But definitely, in terms of pressing stuff and energy and fatigue, that's definitely something we've picked up on, and the data definitely backs that up. Lily White India says it's understandable the system is exhausting, but in the Brighton game, our players didn't tire over the period of the second half. They turned up complacent from the first minute. Maybe it was just complacency, but there's clearly been a drop off in pressing in the last two games as well, even the games you've won. And you wouldn't say you've got complacent in those games. So is it just a complacency problem, or is the system just too intense to keep up for 90 minutes? Daniel Levy. Ange ball is exhausting our players. Their intensity dies by the second half. The question now becomes, does Ange think that the decrease in intensity in both attacking and pressing phase that occurred in our second half happened because of players' exhaustion or player complacency? I mean, I don't see them just being complacent every game, to be honest. I don't know if, do we really believe these players are just always complacent around the same time? That seems too much of a coincidence. I think maybe fatigue has to be a bit of an issue here.